Magandang araw sa inyong lahat. Good day to all. I am Sunny Coloma, and I'm happy to be with you as we talk about a very important topic. And my topic for this talk is there a right time to be ethical? I came across a story in the Harvard Business Review of May 2014. A certain business writer wrote an article in which she said, "I wouldn't advise companies to establish burdensome rules, but they should take deliberate action to avoid system pitfalls. And there are simple ways to limit opportunities for immorality. For example, tasks with a moral component can be shifted in the morning and after breaks, when managers and employees are less depleted. At the very least, try to avoid scheduling these activities at the end of the day." This was based on an experiment on dishonest behavior. Participants were offered more money if they lied. Of those that participated in the study, 65% lied in the afternoon. 43% lied in the morning. So the author's conclusion was, in the afternoon, the moral slope gets slipperier. That's from the common expression, the slippery slope. The moral slope gets slipperier. Let's rewind that a bit. According to the experiment, a higher 65% lied in the afternoon and 43% lied in the morning. So there are more people who are honest in the morning, or there are more people who are dishonest in the afternoon. Frankly speaking, I am uncomfortable with this kind of declaration, or what I regard as a rather smug conclusion. And this is what I'd like to tell the author. Let's get real. Organizations must be more proactive and decisive in fostering ethical behavior at a time when truth and goodness are being progressively relativized. What do I mean? The article was written in 2014. Guess what? In 2016, Oxford Dictionary's word of the year was post-truth. This was the year, 2016, when Donald Trump was elected U.S. President. And according to Oxford Dictionary, this is the meaning of post-truth. Remember, the root word truth is supplemented by a word that comes before it, post-truth. And the meaning, according to Oxford, is relating to or denoting circumstances in which, take note, objective facts are less influential in shaping public opinion than appeals to emotion and personal belief. I grew up in a school that was where religion was taught. And in the morning, we'll have religion class. And it was always emphasized to us that we need to tell the truth. We need to believe in goodness. How was I to expect that decades later, people will start talking about a phenomenon called post-truth? I thought truth was truth, a simple, elemental principle that does not need to be embellished. Truth is what it is. It just needs to be understood, appreciated, and practiced in real life. And of course, the emergence of post-truth as the word of the year happens within a context. And The Economist commented on post-truth in this manner. Post-truth picks out the heart of what is new. The truth is not falsified or contested, but of secondary importance. Can you imagine being told that truth is no longer of primary, but of secondary importance? Isn't it that in our courts of law and in formal occasions where there is need for testimony, an oath is taken by a person and the person is asked, do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? And now we are told that, oh well, truth is relative. It is of secondary importance. So this is very disturbing, as we are told by The Economist. Lies, rumor, and gossip spread with alarming speed. Lies that are widely shared online within a network whose members trust each other more than they trust any mainstream media source, can quickly take on the appearance of truth. And so we need to look closely into social media. And this would be Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and lately TikTok. These are platforms, digital platforms, in which every man, woman, and child who happens to be in possession of a smartphone could easily access any of these popular social media networks and be a part of millions of followers or participants. But let's hold our horses. There are positive and not so positive or negative aspects. What are the positive aspects of social media? Number one, connectivity. So many millions of people are using social media on a daily basis. It provides great opportunity for businesses and individuals to reach a wide range of audiences. Example, during the pandemic, so many people locked in their homes, quarantined, and sequestered by draconian measures of lockdown and quarantine enforced in order to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. They were able to discover a way for reaching out, a way for selling their products, even their talents, through the magic of connectivity provided by social media platforms. There are even personal trainers who collected so many followers and so many physical fitness enthusiasts just by doing Zoom lessons. And so connectivity is one of the positive elements. Second, information and updates. Social media provides information and updates when needed. Third is education. Fourth is marketing. Social media could also be used to sell and promote products. The fifth is awareness, which also leads to better customer satisfaction, and overall brand management is enhanced because you are able to market your products, build relationships, and reach to a potential audience of millions. What are the facts? In 2019, it is estimated there were about 2.77 billion social network users around the globe. I imagine this figure should now be closer to 4 or 5 billion, if not greater. The number of people using the top social media platform in its country has increased by almost 1 million new users every day during the past 12 months. The global number of people using social media has grown by 13% in the past 12 months, with Central and Southeast Asia, that's our region, recording the fastest gains. According to the 2017 official report published by Facebook, on average, there were 1.4 billion daily active users of Facebook, an increase of at least 14% every year. But social media could also be a distraction and hindrance. One of the evils is cyberbullying, which victimizes young people and the vulnerable with the use of derogatory photographs and videos. Social networking, while appearing to be a boon factor, could also be a bane factor because in a larger sense, it may create social isolation. Addiction to social media results in a number of negative health impacts such as strain, eye problems, and fatigue. Even terrorist organizations like Al-Qaeda and ISIS use the social media to spread their propaganda and also to polarize people. One of the important aspects of social media with deleterious effects or harmful effects is it has marginalized face-to-face communication. Moreover, the use of social media could be highly addictive. There are people who forgo sleep because of their indulgence in social media network, and this would also cause depression and loneliness. Which brings us now to a force that has been in existence for more than a century. And I speak of Rotary International, a civic organization composed of approximately 1.2 million individuals belonging to Rotary clubs all over the world that has propagated a four-way test, the four-way test of Rotary, that, in my view and to my mind, constitutes a bastion of defense, a bulwark and a rampart of security in terms of upholding truth and righteousness. What is the four-way test? First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill or better friendships? And fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? I remember as a college student many decades ago, seeing the four-way test in bus stops and in public places. And sometimes the wait for the bus or the jeepney could be so long that I could memorize the four-way test. And that was years before I joined a Rotary Club. And I am convinced about the value of the four-way test. It is simple, straightforward, and it provides a practical guide to daily living and interaction with people. It calls attention to the need to follow one's conscience and do what is right while respecting others. As I say this, I would like to make a commentary on situational ethics. There are people who project themselves as practitioners of ethics or authorities in ethics. But my critique is their focus on the situation. This is exemplified by the anecdote that we talked about at the start of this conversation. Remember the claim that people are more inclined to be honest in the morning than in the afternoon because they're probably more tired or their energies have been spent in the latter part of the day. This is what I call situational ethics. I personally do not believe in this concept. I believe being tired or worn down, being pressured or stressed are situations that must be managed and could be managed. These are not states of mind that could be used to justify lying and other forms of wrongdoing. I think and I believe that there is no need for hair-splitting definitions of what behaving ethically means or rationalizations for unethical behavior. If those engaged in business and the professions would live by this tenet. Let me share this with you. And I hope we take this message to heart. I shall value success in my vocation as a worthy ambition only when achieved as a result of service to society and as it helps others to be successful. I shall accept no profit nor distinction which arises from unfair advantage, abuse, privilege, or betrayal of trust. By way of epilogue, at the beginning we ask ourselves, is there a right time to be ethical? I now ask what I believe to be an equally important question. Is there a right place to be ethical? I thought about this because of what I perceive to be bias or negativity toward government and public service. I once saw a TV show where a young child was asked, "What is your ambition?" And the child said, "I want to work in the government." And I was aghast because the hosts berated the child and told the child, "Why do you want to work in government? Don't you know that government is corrupt? Don't you know that government does not pay well?" I believe it is time to dispel and cast aside the widespread misconception and misperception that government service is fraught with corruption. I have worked with government for more than a decade under 3 presidents. And I could say that career public servants abound. They are honest and trustworthy. Being ethical needs to be embedded into the fabric of daily living. Being good and doing good is our calling as human beings. Hindi po dapat piliin pa ang lugar o panahon upang maging mabuti. Let us all promote the ethic of public service. I address this final message to my fellow alumni of the University of the Philippines and to the student community as well. Marapat na mga scholar ng bayan ay mag-ukol ng panahon upang maglingkod sa pamahalaan at sa sambayanan.